All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone who is tuned into our webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to join our webinar about effective traceability management. I'm your moderator, Nick Azad, and I'm joined today by two of my fellow Parsec colleagues, Corey Vodvarka, our manufacturing expert and resident Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and Bill Rokos, our Chief Technical Officer. To quickly bring you up to speed on who Parsec is, we've been in business for over 30 years with a dedicated focus exclusively on developing manufacturing operations management software, which you will hear us abbreviate MOM. Our TrakSYS solution platform is designed to measurably help our customers without the need for disruption and major infrastructure overhaul. TrakSYS has been deployed in thousands of locations in over 100 different countries. We've helped customers in a variety of industries, food and beverage, pharmaceutical, CPG, and aerospace, just to name a few, to significantly improve their manufacturing operations. Today, we'll be focusing on traceability. Now, as with our previous webinars, we reached out to a handful of our customers in advance of this webinar to get a gauge on common issues around traceability, as well as topics of interest. To address that information, we will begin by discussing the challenges we heard, follow that up with a demonstration of how TrakSYS helps solve those issues, and then end with an open Q&A session. So to kick things off, Corey, my first question for you, why would someone need traceability software?
Well, many government-regulated industries like pharma, medical devices, food and beverage, and aerospace, they're required to maintain records for traceability. However, even if your industry isn't regulated, you can benefit from having real-time data for ensuring product quality, customer satisfaction, as well as protecting your brand. In the event you needed to conduct a product recall, companies need to be able to respond to recalls intelligently. They need to be able to pull 100% of the tainted product, but not pull anything that isn't posing a danger. So it's important to have that accuracy when it comes to recalls, as well as having good response time. Companies need to be able to perform recalls and notify their customers, vendors, and the government agencies, if applicable, in the least amount of time as possible. So if your company needed to conduct a recall, how quickly could you guys actually identify the scope of the recall? If you're using paper-based systems, this may be hours, days, weeks, but with electronic systems, this can be significantly reduced to a matter of minutes. But more importantly, do you have visibility into your processes to identify and prevent quality issues before they escape from the plant?
So this sounds like a very pivotal piece. How would you recommend getting started?
So collaborating with your supply chain partners is really crucial for implementing traceability. It only really requires one break in the chain to lose traceability. So some supply chains are really simple. When you're conducting direct business with suppliers and customers, you have clear visibility of where you're getting your materials from. However, others can be extremely complex. When it comes to sourcing a lot of materials through international trade or through distributors, you have to go into a lot more detail to find out where the material is coming from. This is where information systems like ERP software can really fall down, because it's extremely hard to get all the suppliers in the supply chain onto those types of systems. It requires having a physical presence and setting up software locally for them to report back to their customers. This is where a web-based technology can provide an environment which is accessible to everybody for exchanging information back and forth.
Excellent. So what components would I expect to find in a full traceability solution?
So traceability is all about tracking and recording the product movements, activities, process parameters, and testing throughout the supply chain. Manufacturers need to ensure they have systems and software in place for lot tracing, both forward across the distribution chain, as well as backward across the supply chain. It starts with the ability to easily link lot numbers with ingredients and their suppliers. So organizations can use tools such as lot codes, barcodes, and RFID to ID those goods through the manufacturing process. Companies should be able to determine when a lot was received into inventory and where that lot was consumed in the manufacturing process. This allows them to link the lot to the finished product barcode label. So if a product needs to be recalled, the manufacturer can use its system to identify the finished goods that were produced with the ingredient lot and then notify the customers who purchased those goods. With full traceability, we can also track data like production routes, machine conditions, process parameters, and quality inspection results. This helps have a record so you can actually go back and determine the root causes of your recall issues.
So what if I already have some pieces of a traceability solution in place?
So we can integrate TrakSYS traceability with a lot of different existing technologies. Information like raw material suppliers, production routes, process parameters, quality values, this information may actually reside in a variety of different existing systems. So a centralized system capable of interoperability with existing business systems as well as automation devices can gather as well as contextualize data from these disparate systems. This provides a complete record of genealogy, transformation, and movements of goods from receipt to order fulfillment.
So how can a real-time traceability solution help to prevent a recall?
So with a real-time event monitoring systems, companies can actually create alerts that notify managers across the supply chain when an incident occurs. This enables companies to actually freeze the inventory, whether it's in the plant, the warehouse, or it's in transit. By linking these alerts to warehouse and order fulfillment systems, they can actually prevent further escape of affected products.
Okay, but what if you determined that non-compliant product did get through? How can a real-time traceability solution help to limit the impact of now the recall?
So in the case of a recall, it's important to quickly and accurately determine the scope of the recall so it can be communicated to both the internal functions as well as the customers. This can help contain the recall and prevent further sales. So it's really important to minimize the time it takes to take action so you can actually reduce the risk of exposure to customers.
Excellent. Well, as always, thank you, Corey. It's such a pleasure to get to sit down and chat with you. I always learn so much. We're now at the point where I want to turn things over to Bill Rokos, who is going to introduce the TrakSYS platform and then take us through the demonstration. Mr. Bill?
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Corey. Thank you, everyone, for joining. What I'm going to be doing is just giving you a very brief overview of a potential solution for these things that Nick and Corey have been going through with you today, traceability, and that would be, of course, something like the TrakSYS platform. This is a big topic. We have a limited amount of time. Some of you may be familiar, some of you won't. So I'm going to go through a high-level overview of, let's say, the TrakSYS architecture here, as you can see on the screen. It is a central database, a site database with different modules and components that implement different MOM and MES functionalities. As you can see in the center, we've got the core data structures and core applications. Out on the left, you've got users and different consumers of the information and people that are going to enter information into the system via any kind of browser-based mobile device, workstations on the plant floor. It's very flexible there. The core of TrakSYS also connects with various different business applications because we work in conjunction with ERP systems very commonly. All sorts of different plant floor systems that are maybe doing different bits and pieces of some of the data collection. So there's standard APIs and connectors for those. And then, of course, we sit on top of the the production environment and can communicate with all the different things going on in production using a wide variety of technologies, including OPC, file transfers, custom APIs. All of this is possible, and you can see all this information flowing up into TrakSYS from there. So a very brief architecture there of TrakSYS. And then before we jump into the demo, we're going to just touch on, again, real-time traceability is the theme today. So you're going to see a lot of things in the application as I move around, but what we're focusing on are all the things that Nick and Corey went through, from receiving product to scanning when product is consumed in different areas, the different lots that are consumed, where it's consumed, what processes we're running, different production process variables that are in play at the time, all the way through the entire manufacturing process to shipping and everything in between. So that's the thrust of the demonstration. At this point, I'm going to ask if the guys can switch me over into the application here. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to take you through about 6 or 7 different sort of mini topics that cover all the subjects that were gone through earlier. What you're looking at here, if you've never seen it, is an example, a demonstration environment of TrakSYS. It's sitting on top of a manufacturing process called Orange County Vitamin, which is a vitamin manufacturer, and there are batching operations there where we make raw batching vitamin materials. There's tableting operations where we press those or fill tablets. And then finally, there's packaging operations where those tablets are put into bottles and then bottles into cases and so forth and pallets and shipped. So this is sort of a full end-to-end example process, and we're going to jump around into different areas of this to highlight some of the traceability capabilities of TrakSYS. So we're going to start out by heading over to the warehouse interface here through the top menu. And this first example is something Corey touched on early on, and that is integrating with the other parts of the supply chain. So there are many different ways this can be done. TrakSYS has got a lot of capabilities to interact with other business systems, even outside the enterprise or the local manufacturing plant. Certainly, vendors can be hooked up to where they can come into a TrakSYS application that's exposed over the internet and enter information about potential shipments in. In this scenario, what we're doing is modeling an example where the suppliers of raw materials for Orange County Vitamin will post shipment information in advance of the shipments arriving somewhere, and some TrakSYS modules are configured to go and pull those from maybe a remote FTP site or some other web service and pull those in. So you can see down the left side of this page, we've got advanced information on incoming orders. So we can see what's on its way in advance. And then when orders actually do arrive, for example, let's take maltodextrin here, and we'll go ahead and click on this. We have the capability of pulling up information about what was sent in that order. The lot number is already pre-scanned in there. We know that we were expecting 60 kilograms. We can actually enter in the actual quantity received in case there was some differential, edit some of this information, add some notes, and accept this in. And that'll pull that in to the right side over here. And at that point, what we're doing is acting as it's an intermediary between the supply chain and also the ERP or warehouse management system. So a couple things can be happening here, and these are all different options and different ways this can be implemented. We can be simply passing this information back into the ERP inventory management system and saying, hey, this material was received, here's some notes on it, here's some different information on it, let them store that. We can pass that information on and store some information in the TrakSYS traceability tables, because if you're using TrakSYS as the traceability solution, we want to know some of that information as well as the warehouse. Or in some cases, TrakSYS can be used as an inventory management system, and we can store that information permanently, all in TrakSYS. So lots of different options here. Receiving product in is one of the earliest areas of traceability. I'm going to jump around here, and I'm going to move over to the batching operation next to show you some examples of material consumption. And so that would be in batching. We're going to dive down onto an actual production line to show what it would be like to consume some material. All right, and you'll see over here on the left side a menu. I've got a pre-weigh section on line 1. And what this is telling me is for this batching run that I'm currently making, so we've now zoomed down onto the plant floor and batching, these are the different production orders that are upcoming on that line. And if I click on one of the production orders, this first one, B5825, you can see down below, these are the raw materials that are needed to be consumed. And we can take, let's say, again, maltodextrin, the first material, and go into this pre-weigh screen. And so a couple of things going on here. There's actually obviously pre-weigh functionality and batching capabilities that we're showing here, where we're getting materials ready for the line. But more importantly, as we pre-weigh material out, we're selecting the lot number of the material that's coming in. So I can have a drop down of the materials that are in the warehouse, because again, TrakSYS knows about what those things are, because we may be keeping track of those. We can scan that kind of information in as well, capture quantities from the scale, and start creating records of consumption here. So you can see I'm adding a particular quantity of this maltodextrin from this lot, and I may be creating a new lot number, an internal lot number. I may be tracking my user credentials here for who did the consumption, and any other relevant notes here that we want to capture. So this is an example of material consumption. Of course, with this example and all the other things I'm showing you, there are many different ways that this can be done in terms of user interface and in terms of interacting with equipment. But the main concept to get across here is that we're providing a unified system for doing those consumptions and collecting that information throughout the entire process. All right. So let me jump over now to another area and talk about associating other information. So we've got actually material consumption, which is the core of the traceability, but some other things that touch on topics Corey went over is other information that's being captured in the manufacturing process along the way that can be very useful for keeping track of quality type information after the fact, but also heading off information in real time. So this is an example of a packaging dashboard on line 1 packaging system, and we're seeing all sorts of telemetry here about the process. Stoppage events. Over here on the right, we've got quality tasks that need to be done periodically. We've got operator observations that can be entered in. There's here in the left menu, we can go to SBC sampling being done, historian pages about trends of different process variables. And these are all things that TrakSYS, in addition to traceability, is collecting and can be associated in real time without having to do a lot of paperwork with every lot, with every sublot that's produced. And so having a system like this that's capable of collecting this data automatically allows you to get more resolution. For example, potentially splitting a long production run into smaller sublots, let's say every time the shift changes, or every time an operator changes on the line, or some significant line event occurs. And that allows you to take smaller chunks of the production and associate data with those smaller chunks. So if there is issues later, you can narrow it down to smaller pieces of the production that may have to be recalled or may have to be examined, right? So material consumption, associating production data in real time, key pieces. The next thing I'll talk about briefly is I'll jump back over to the warehouse and talk about real-time inventory status. So we've got a couple of examples of that down here in the left under location tracking. I can flip through storage, pre-production storage areas, and take a look at things that are staged for production here. I have batch staging, I have tablet staging, packaging staging areas. I can go look in production and take a look at what materials are actually out on the different production lines, both raw materials and produced materials, and then finally all the way through to shipping. where we see everything that's been produced and maybe out waiting to be shipped out. And so, again, you've got some options here. TrakSYS is very good at coordinating with ERP and warehouse management systems. So these can simply be windows into inventory systems that are storing this information. TrakSYS could be used as an inventory system in some cases. And then you've got the other case, which sort of sits in between, and that is that in a lot of production environments, there is sort of a blind spot in the ERP WMS systems, and that is that once materials get down to the plant floor and they're in process, that there are different intermediate stages of production where the warehousing systems sort of lose track of material until they become actual produced product at the end. We call that work in process. And that is another area TrakSYS can fill in that gap, because it's very good at connecting to the actual process and keeping track of what's being moved around where and what's being produced in the interim, so you can get better visibility there in terms of work in process real-time inventory as well. We're going to head down next to the reporting area of the warehouse to material inventory and take a look at again, some other real-time inventory. I see all my batching raw materials here that are listed out, the current stock levels, how many days until I run out of that based on some projections and consumption. But what I want to jump into here is really starting that traceability story. And when we talk about traceability and having an incident where we want to track things, there are sort of two scenarios we typically look at, and that is tracing from sort of the bottom up, so from a raw material that may have been reported as bad from one of our suppliers, and trying to see what different things were produced with that. And the flip side, where we have a report of a problem with a lot that we've produced in the factory, and we want to trace it back to the raw materials that were used in it to see if we can figure out where those things may have come from. So that first scenario we'll take from the bottom up. So we'll take a raw material like maltodextrin and come over here on the right, and we can see in inventory we have several different lots of maltodextrin. And if I click on the trace icon for one of those lots of maltodextrin, I get redirected to basically the results of a search page, which will tell me everything that possibly was done with that lot of maltodextrin. All right, and you can see I've consumed this maltodextrin in several cases, the date and time that I've consumed it, the user that's consumed it. There were some inventory counts on it. You can see when it was moved to the line, when it was moved to batching stages, staging areas. So really just a full history of everything that happened with that particular raw material. And even down here, consumed by. These are the different batches that particular lot was used in. So really important to go from the bottom up, where I can see all the movements and all the batches that lot was consumed in. And then on the flip side, anywhere in the software that I have any one of these items, I can take a particular lot here, and you can say, a particular batch that was made, and I can click on the trace on that, and I can come from the top down. So now I can see information about that particular batch, some history of that batch, and then over on the right, all the different raw materials that went into that batch. So you can see the maltodextrin is here, but you can see I also consumed iron, and actually I consumed 2 different lots of maltodextrin for this particular batch, and so forth. So I can go from the bottom up or from the top down and anywhere in between and trace that material throughout the process here. All right. Next, second to last item is a product lookup capability, and what this is sort of a top-down look, basically what I just finished on. But this actually goes to where you may be able to expose this information out to either downstream consumers of what you're making for their traceability needs, or potentially even end customers that can come in and look up information, limited information about something that they've bought for let's say authenticity checks, or if there's queries about country of origin, or even you want to expose some quality, level data. Some vendors or some of our customers I know are very interested in exposing a look into their process, so the end consumer can look up information about when their product was made, and and where it was made and what tests were run on it. A good example of that recently that we encountered was in watchmaking, in fine watchmaking. These items are so, they're marketed, with very high value, and one of the benefits is, they have a unique number, and the customer can buy that and sort of see everything that went into making their watch. So if you're in an industry like that, there's some interesting things here. So for any item that we have, let's say we'll go to shipping, and we'll just take a pallet or any item that we've produced, hit track on that, and we'll get into this customer product lookup. A screen like this or information like this could be available for any piece, pallet, container that's made. And again, how it's formatted and what you expose would be, up to you, but you can see all sorts of information on when it was produced, and all sorts of item genealogy of the different raw materials that went into it, and different actions, which batching lot went into it, which tabulating lot went into it. Again, maybe not the greatest example in a vitamin manufacturing, but you can have access to this type of information. And then the last thing I want to show you, I know there's a lot that I'm flipping through here, is sort of the culmination of all of this, of everything that I've been talking about. And I'll go back to batching for that. Go back to line 1 in batching, and take a look at a batching report and electronic batch record or electronic production record for batch 4615 of Drispelin, and hit overview. And what you're going to see here is a culmination of really everything that we've been talking about. We've got an overall picture of everything that went into making a particular product. Okay, we've got things like quality and performance information. We've got material consumption information about that batch. Again, can enter it in to this from this angle, seeing all the materials that were consumed, who added them, which lot, which user, and then we can launch into that traceability matrix up and down from here. Just really everything packaged into one area. And really, I'll end on, that's the power of having an automated system like this, with the capability of storing all of these different things, even beyond traceability, because these things all do relate together. And one way or the other, whether you're really interested in the full MES stack initially or not, eventually you probably will evolve to wanting to tie all these things together, and it's much easier, a much better process to go through, to having a platform where you can do all that once in one place, rather than tying these things together from many different systems. So with that, I'll ask the guys to flip us back over to the slide and give you a little summary slide. And we'll advance one more. And I'll leave you on this before the Q&A period, and that is that, as I mentioned at the end there, we're talking about traceability today. We've had other webinars on some of these other subjects. They really do all tie together in the end. There's certainly systems out there. You can look at this list and say, yeah, there's software systems that specialize in these things, but they really are all intertwined, and being able to tie that information all together, as you could see with some of the examples I went through, is very useful, and that's why we built the TrakSYS product the way we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nick or Corey and have them kick off the Q&A session, and I'll hang around in case there's any technical questions.
Thanks for walking us through the presentation, Bill. It's a very good demonstration. Appreciate that. With that, we're going to turn things over to the Q&A portion of the webinar. So feel free to enter in your questions into the GoToMeeting console on the right. If there's questions we don't get to, we'll make sure that all of them get answered, and we'll provide that with the recording to the webinar following this webinar. So we got a few questions coming in. The first one is, does TrakSYS work with Oracle? Bill, you want to take that?
So sure. So there's two possible meanings to that question, so I'll just answer them both. One sort of simple low-level one is the back-end database that TrakSYS sits on, that it stores its data in, is a SQL Server database, and TrakSYS is only compatible with running itself on SQL Server. But the other interpretation of that, which it's hard to tell from just the question, is does TrakSYS work with Oracle's ERP systems? Because Oracle has a suite of all sorts of ERP systems and maybe some manufacturing modules in there. And the answer to that will be yes. We have a pretty open-ended approach to integrating with other business systems. There's an endless number of ways and different versions of these business systems out there. So the approach TrakSYS takes is to provide what's called our data management service and the capability to create interface modules using anything like web services, direct database connections, flat file transfers, and all of these techniques are compatible with any other type of computer system. So for the second piece, definitely. So not sure which one you were talking about, but I try to cover them both there.
Okay, thanks. I think that covers it. The next question is, can TrakSYS be used to connect to a document control system for utilizing SOPs in a document control system?
Yeah, you want me to take that one too, Corey?
Sure.
Sure. So you can jump in if you have something to add, but yeah, absolutely, we do this regularly. And really, the most common and most straightforward approach is that throughout the application, you guys saw a lot of screens I just went through where there are cases, especially in things like quality tasks and procedures at the beginning and end of production orders that are stored in external systems. There are a variety of places in TrakSYS to configure links and URLs and basically connectors over to those systems. So you wouldn't actually be bringing the documents over into TrakSYS. You would just be storing the appropriate connection information for a particular SOP to a particular task. And because TrakSYS is a web application, those things are easy to jump from the TrakSYS page into the document management system, or even sometimes display the content directly in a TrakSYS page. We actually have examples of that in the demonstration. So I'll use this opportunity to say something I should have said at the end of the demonstration. If anyone has any questions about a piece that they saw or something where they want to go deeper, that was a very quick breeze through. Obviously, we're going to give you contact information at the end. You can get back with us and we could show you something like that. We've got a lot of examples of that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Thank you for your answers, and thank you to the people that wrote in the answers to the questions that we just answered, as well as the ones that we were not able to get to. We will be emailing out to you. So for anything else, as Bill mentioned, please feel free to contact us at the email address that's on screen. You can also always find out more about our platform, TrakSYS, on our website, www.parsec-corp.com/TrakSYS. Till next time, thank you so much.